Welcome back, everyone. I hope you are doing spectacularly well. I am in another new location today. I will have you guess, but I will not actually tell you in the next video where this is, in part because I'm going to get you to guess on the next video, and the next video will be close to this one, and so as a result, I don't want the one to ruin the other. But that being said, I am in a beautiful destination here, and figured I would spend some time talking to you a little bit today about a topic I think is really important in terms of if we want to be, just good, effective individuals in life. And this goes for in our relationships, in our, our wealth, our success, our, just general life. And so I'm a really big fan of kind of mental models and ways to think and becoming somebody who is just the best version of myself that I can be, and I think everybody should. It's kind of part of our journey of self-actualization. So one of the topics around this I've been discussing with some friends who I really respect how they think is the topic of independent thinking. So today I'm going to discuss a few of the things that kind of in conversations with friends, as well as paying attention for myself and for others, are great ways of cultivating independent thinking. So that's what we're going to discuss today. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts, maybe before I share mine, just so that we don't end up in a situation where I bias you. You can put them in the comments below, along with, again, where you think that I am today. And then I will get into it. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. Welcome to Offshore Citizen, where we help you get second residencies, second citizenships, form companies, open bank accounts, optimize your global tax, basically, enrich your life through internationalization, and take what can be challenging for people and cause them problems and make it instead into something really great. So let's get started. Now, so independent thinking. I was talking to, in particular, a couple friends who I think they are great examples of people who are, they're not contrarian per se. Like, you don't really want to be contrarian. I have talked a little bit about that in the past, and I think it's a useful exercise to do contrarian thinking. But, the reality is that a lot of the times you are going to be right if you're against the herd, and you're going to be right if you're for the herd. The idea is not to be against the herd or for the herd in some particular way, but rather to be thinking on your own and not buying into what I would call groupthink. So independent thinking I would contrast strongly with groupthink. So I was talking to a couple friends who I find consistent, really excellent independent thinkers, and people who I respect a lot, their thought process, their ability to stand up for themselves, not to be swayed by the views of others, and just discussing with them how is it that they got that way. And I think it's an interesting question in general. If you think back for your own life, the areas where you don't do groupthink, where you don't buy into some particular ideology of other people, etc., you're willing to stand up, maybe in the face of your own tribe, but also in the face of others, for something that you believe in, and you hold a view that is clear, well considered, well reflected on, etc. What is it that drove that? And so some of the things that I found seem to be the case are, number one, generally speaking, these are people who were encouraged at a fairly early age to do it. And so often by their parents. I know my father used to say to me, eat shit, 100 billion flies can't be wrong. And so, just kind of to illustrate that, listen, the majority is not always right. The majority, in fact, is very often wrong. And so if you were to just go with the majority, you would end up doing really stupid things. And so here then are a few key concepts that I thought of if we want to improve our independent thinking, what we might do. And the first of these, I think, comes naturally when we start to examine the idea of groupthink and where does groupthink come from. Now, I've noticed, unfortunately, it seems like there's a strong correlation between which media people watch and the nature of their thinking, which is kind of saddening or disheartening or something like that, right? You don't really want to be a subject of the media that you surround yourself by. You want to be a function of the truth and careful evaluation regardless of what that media is. So the first thing I think is really useful, and there's a great book to check out called Range, very, very excellent book. It discusses how actually people with broad range tend to be better at predictions than high specialists, which is kind of interesting. And so I think it's really, really important that we expose ourselves to a broad range of influences, okay? Many, many different perspectives. This means deliberately seeking out, usually, new ways of thinking, new ideas, etc. Not because, we should be always chasing the newest, hottest, latest, greatest thing, but rather because of the fact that we want to expose ourselves to multiple influences that we can pull on to piece together our own views. So this is a very, very important point, is to have multiple influences in our lives. Okay, so that's number one. Number two would be, and by the way, I think when it comes to creativity, we talk lots about creativity as though it's something that comes from within, but actually I think it's more like how we combine different influences we have between us in ways that haven't been seen before. So again, very useful to go and get other reference points. Two really interesting examples of this are, I was just watching a really, really cool interview with a very famous computer scientist, actually one of the guys who kind of pioneered computer science as a science, and he was discussing about finding problems in the real world in industry, and talking about how Renoir, the famous painter, would go and paint outside, and when asked why he did this, he said, well, it's because if I think when I'm inside of different types of leaves, I might come up with 5 or 6. But when I step outside, I'm right now in kind of this really nice garden, there's like infinite, right? There's so many combinations that I can put myself into a position where I end up being able to paint and I can draw from. My brother, who's an artist for a video game company, always talks about when you're going to create something, the first thing you should do is start by going and looking for reference material. So again, lots of different pieces of information there. The next thing that is maybe, I don't know if it's self-evident or not, but comes up when I think about this, is thinking on your own. So if you just think about what does it mean to have independent thinking? Well, independent thinking is thinking independently. And so how do you get that if you're always thinking in a group setting? It's very, very useful to be able to think on your own, okay? Just take time out on your own and think. And it's not to say that groups aren't useful. Groups are incredibly useful. But having groups kind of biases you away from letting your own thoughts percolate and develop. So I would say just going on walks, etc., can be very important. Okay. The spending time, right? You just have to put in the time often, and that's, yeah, I just think it's a very, very useful pursuit. One of the pieces of advice that Warren Buffett gave to Bill Gates as a CEO was just the importance of sitting alone and thinking, and how significant this is to making the right decisions. The third point, I think, is about reflection, okay? So in other words, there's different types of thinking. Some are memorization, some are kind of very learning, having influences, etc. But the process of reflecting is something that you learn in a different way on. And so it obviously relates to independent thinking. But there's, I think, some tools around this. And one of those tools that I pay quite a bit of attention to is the idea of, well, maybe two, writing, right? So when you write, you're forcing yourself to structure your thoughts in a particular way. And that can be really useful, which goes along with teaching others, right? When you are forced to teach others, then you learn twice. So very, very helpful. And the last one is talking to yourself. Speaking in general, I think, helps to articulate ideas and clarify thoughts, etc. But talking to yourself is, I think, an underrated practice that can really help to clarify thinking. So all things that I would encourage you to do. Let me know what yours are in the comments below, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.